All right, we're rolling.
Good evening, everybody. This is, well, I guess since last week's was the penultimate clinic, that would make this, by definition, the last clinic. And we can all applaud that and get ready for the first tip-off. Uh, Quinn, we've got Greg back with us tonight and excited to have Greg back with us and also excited to have Renee Rector with us tonight. Renee was an excellent presenter with us last year, and I was finally able to get her to join us, and we're so excited to have her with us for this ultimate clinic. Renee, say hello to everybody, and you know the drill, Renee. You have to have Renee is not only, and there's another one. She's not only an outstanding high school basketball official, but she's also a really good NCAA women's basketball official. And Renee, say hello to everybody and let them know by memory. Now, you can't go back to your notes, by memory, all the conferences that you work for in the NCAA.
Well, first off, hello everyone. The conferences that I am currently in are the Coastal, the Big South, the ASUN, SAC, Coastal Carolina, CIAA, and USA South.
Holy God. Well, you've earned all of that and more, Renee. We're again, it's happy to have you with us. And I know this takes a lot of time, but we appreciate you.
Thank you.
All right, I had some questions, answers that came in. I worded one of them really, really poorly. Greg and I were just talking about it. It has to do with illegal numbers. A player cannot wear an illegal number. What I really had in mind was a scenario, one of two scenarios, one of which was coach comes to you before the game. I had this happen actually. Coach comes to you before the game and says, hey, I've got a player that's just joined the team and he loves number 7. Well, he's a player that just got off the plane from Germany or somewhere and joined this high school team. And it's a legal number in Germany, so he wants to wear it in the United States, and it's not a legal number. And so your answer is no, he can't wear that number. And in fact, the answer is no, you can't buy him in at the expense of a technical foul. He just can't wear the number. It's illegal. He or she cannot wear that number. Now, it could happen that you are in the middle of a game and you call a foul and then you realize that you're about ready to report that foul on number 7 because it somehow slipped past the crew that we have a number 7 in the book and in the game. Well, if that happens, it is a technical foul. And it's charged directly to the head coach. Remember, all technical fouls in high school basketball also count towards the team total. But it's also charged directly to the head coach. Now, in addition to that, that player cannot continue to play in the game with that illegal number. Again, he can't buy his way in with a technical foul, and he can't keep himself in at the expense of a technical foul. So he's got to come out now. If he never plays in the game, let's say we got a number 7 in the book and number 7 sitting on the bench, that's not a technical foul. He can't play with an illegal number. So in order for him to continue to play, if he does play with the illegal number, you catch it, it's a technical foul. In order for him to continue to play, he's got to change to a legal number. Okay. If it's discovered that a jewelry, this came up in the summer league games, that's why I asked the question. What happens if you discover that a player is wearing jewelry during the game? So number 2's in the game, number 2's got an earring, you see number 2's got an earring, what do you do? Is that a technical foul? No, it is not. There's no penalty for that in the NFHS rule book. I'm aware of the fact that there's some NCHSAA interpretations from years ago where I think it was a technical foul, may still be, according to the North Carolina High School Athletic Association interpretations, but that's not the Federation rule. That player simply can't play with illegal jewelry or illegal apparel or equipment. So they have to leave the game and they can't come back into the game until they have made themselves legal, but it's not a technical foul. Which, by the way, leads me into two things. Number one, we're going to referee by the NF. We're going to referee games that I assign by the NFHS rule book. We're not coming off book with rules. all going to be in the rule book or they don't exist. And number two, remember that if a player comes out of the game, is substituted out of the game for any reason, that player cannot re-enter the game under any circumstances except one, under any circumstances until time has properly come off the clock. Live ball, dead ball has nothing to do with it. If A2 has to come out of the game because A2 is wearing a earring, A2 cannot come back into the game until two things have happened. The jewelry has been removed, and B, time has properly come off the clock. The only exception to that about not being able to come back in until time comes off the clock is if, let's say A2 is substituted out for A6, and then time hasn't come off the clock, but let's say we've got like a throw in or something, and during the throw in, clock's not running, and a player on the floor for A like breaks his leg or something, and there's no substitute, no available substitute except the guy that just, or girl that just came out of the game, then of course that player can come back in the game. That would be the exception to the rule. I hope I didn't confuse everybody with that, but if I did, just send me an email. I get lots of emails about confusing people. Team bench does not need to be located entirely within the coach's box. There's no rule that says it does, but we need to be observant of that while we're observing warm-ups. We need to know where the benches are located and where the head coach is likely to sit. If the team bench extends beyond the coaching box area, the head coach needs to pick a seat inside the coaching box area. Otherwise, he's going to be sitting for the entire basketball game. I hope that makes sense. Does that make sense, Greg? Greg, stop listening. I don't blame him.
Yeah, no, I'm listening. I was shaking my head. My microphone's on mute.
All right. And again, we're going to talk about the topic tonight is game management. We're going to be talking about one of the things we're going to be talking about is pre-games. There are certain gyms that we're going to be working in where the benches are sort of screwed up in terms of how they're located, and we need to be aware of that. The Reynolds High School gym comes immediately to mind. They're off center in terms of the 28-foot mark. They're off center in terms of the scores table. So when I say off center, they're just not located normally. So you need to decide in pregame. You need to be aware of that, and you need to decide how you're going to handle the coach's box in that situation, in those situations. Last thing, there was two things really. One was I was asked a question about the fake rule and when to blow the whistle, blah blah blah. I have a whole thing that came out from the National Federation about the fake rule and how we're to handle it at the high school level, and I will send that out by email to everybody, all of you on the staff. And the second thing that came up, and it had to do, Greg, with your commentary last week, you and Garrett, about a play where it started from the slot position, went to the basket, a drive to the basket, and a secondary defense. The contact occurred between the dribbler and the secondary defender, but the comment was, but the secondary defender was outside the lane line on slot side, so shouldn't slot have primary on that play? And that is correct. The contact did occur slightly outside the line, about a step or two outside the lane line on slot side. And the old rule of thought was that would be, since it started from the slot would take it all the way to the basket. That was the old rule, especially if the contact occurs on the slot side of the lane. But that is not how we're refereeing that play now. But what Garrett and Greg said last week is how we want to referee that play. Lead has primary responsibility on all secondary defender plays. But as Greg pointed out last week, the slot has to be prepared to give secondary help on that play. The slot might get, the lead may not have a whistle on that play for some reason, and we have to have a whistle. If the lead doesn't have a whistle, the slot needs to have it. Or the lead may feel like, you know what, that's my play. I've got a whistle on that play, but so does the slot. And I feel like on this particular play, in this particular situation, the slot had the better look at this play. I want to give it up to the slot. And the slot has to be prepared to take that play. Am I saying that right, Greg?
100%. Yeah, I do think there are instances where there may be a secondary defender in slots primary. And yes, we talk about how, secondary defender our lead plays. But for example, let's say we're in transition and it's a secondary defender and there's like 15 feet between the primary and secondary defender. The slot referee has enough time to now turn their focus to the secondary defender. And if it's on that side of the floor, go for it. I think lead would be able to think to themselves, oh, slot can get that. But on that specific play that we're talking about, there was too much for slot to referee on their own with just how the play develops, where it would be a lot for me to ask my slot to take that play when lead is refereeing nothing else but the secondary defender. It's the easiest way I like to think about it is who was on the play the longest. I saw that player the whole way through, so I know exactly what happened. Whereas if we're saying, even though it's on the outside of the lane line, slot was just refereeing one player, then turning their focus to a second player when lead was refereeing that second player the whole time.
Very good. Okay, game management. I want to start off with something that's very, very important to me, and that is meaningful pre-games. And I stress the word meaningful. And this is going to be a panel discussion. I'm going to start with Quinn. And Quinn, if you would just sort of give us your thoughts about how to conduct and what constitutes a meaningful pregame at the high school level.
Sure. In some ways, I think that when I was first starting out officiating, I used to think, I'd go to the Coliseum at Christmas time and watch, Chuck Eakes and Robbie Lester and Jeff Dre work, some big matchup. And I think, oh, those guys, they probably just, they just get there 15 minutes before the game, sort of put their stuff on, and they just go out and, they're ready to officiate. But I think as I've been in this longer, what I learned is actually the better pre-games tend to happen from the more experienced officials. They recognize that the key to officiating a game successfully begins with anticipating what's likely to happen in that game, the situations that are likely to arise, and discussing them in the locker room, how they want to handle them, how they want to take care of it before the game, so that when they're out on the court, it all looks seamless, right? It all looks like, wow, they really know what they're doing. And what you don't know is that there was a 15-minute discussion about this how they were going to handle these type of things, in the locker room before the game started, where they said, well, no, what you're saying there, that's dumb. Let's handle it this way. And they sorted it all out there so that once we got it on the court, we could just take care of business. So from sort of to begin with, I think a pregame conference where you have active participation from all three officials is sort of the key, or is a key to successfully officiating a game. I mean, you're not going to do well unless you have a pregame conference with active participation. So while, yes, the manual says, and the referee is going to sort of lead that conference, if I'm the referee in the game, I expect the U1 and the U2 are going to come prepared and ready to contribute some things, to talk about some plays, to let me know what they know about these teams, that maybe I haven't had, maybe I haven't had one of the teams yet this season. So yeah, maybe the referee is leading it, but the U1 and U2 are just as involved as the referee. Now, don't, as U1 or U2, let the referee lead it. Go with them, and there should be a time at the end of certainly every pregame I'm leading. At the end, I go, what I miss? What have we not talked about? So bring those things, but don't come in and derail it, because you want to you've decided you want to do it your way. Um, let's go through it, but everybody make sure we get everything out on the table and discuss everything that makes us, feel comfortable before we go out on the court. Um, your pregame's got to be tailored to both the game that you're about to work and the crew that you're about to work it with. Okay. So, in terms of the game, my pregame is going to be different in the early season versus the later on in the season. In the early season, I may not know much about these two teams, right? In the early season, maybe all I know is that this team's got a bunch of seniors. This team had a bunch of, they brought in a bunch of new kids. I may not know as much about sort of personnel on the teams early in the season. Um, Later in the season, hopefully I will know more, right? If I don't know more, hopefully one of my partners knows more. I can certainly look up the records of the teams, whether they've played before. If they played before, what was the score? If I can find out who worked that game before, I mean, it's nice if you can go find a clip of some video of the two teams playing before, but that's not always possible at the high school level. But do I know somebody who worked that game that I could call and say, hey, I know you worked this, so how, tell me about it. What happened? Who were the players? Were there any situations, any odd situations, any sportsmanship issues, things like that? Um, I I think it's sort of, some people say, well, we don't want to, prejudice ourselves by talking about what happened in past games. And that's true. We don't. This is a new game. But I also am not dumb enough to go in there totally unaware of what happened in that last game. I want to know if we had a fight in the last game. I want to know if it was a 1 point game or a 50-point blowout. Now, does that mean this game's going to be the same? Of course not. But again, it will help me interpret things that happen in this game if I know what happened in the previous game. If it's an early season game, is this supposed to be a tune-up game, or is this two early season powerhouses that going at it? Now, again, it's early season, so who knows? Um, if it's late season, what are the implications for this game? Is this one of the most difficult games I ever worked was a game between the teams that were ranked eighth and ninth in the conference, and the top eight went to the conference tournament. They were basically fighting for the last place seed. So all those things again help you sort of anticipate what's going on. If you're working with three veteran, if you're a veteran official and you're working with two other veterans, that doesn't mean you get the night off. Again, how are you all going to take care of things at the level that you all are capable of taking care of them? If you're working with, if you're a veteran official and it's me and say two other veteran officials, one of the things I'm going to say is, hey, don't let me screw up. If we have any atypical situations, don't let me apply a college rule by accident. Let's be careful of that. All those things, it's just a different pregame if you have three veteran officials. If you're a newer official, don't ask questions. I mean, come in. This is your chance to really learn some stuff. This is your chance to learn how different crews handle different situations. And if you're a veteran official working with that newer official, make your pregame a comfortable space for them to ask those questions. Don't come in and we're going to do X, Y, and Z. Don't screw up my game. Da, da, da. Make your crew a comfortable place for them to come and be their best self. I swear I really only had like 3 bullet points, and I've talked for what feels like about 45 minutes now. So I'm gonna stop because whatever Greg and Renee have to say will be better than anything I have had to say.
Well, I thought that was excellent. Renee, anything that you would like to add in terms of what you do in your pre-games or what you consider to be a good pre-game?
Yeah, Quinn, you kind of hitting on the point on everything, man. But a great pregame sets the tone for your game. I feel like you have a great pregame, you guys are going to come out and be ready to go from tip. Um, I agree 100% with Quinn, especially with working with younger officials. Please ask questions. All right. So if you don't understand something or you want to know how we would do something, that's the perfect time to ask a question, as well as the perfect time for us to talk about atypical situations. I feel like every pregame, even though we don't want to jinx ourselves with atypical situations, it's the perfect time to talk about how we would handle certain situations in the game. Sometimes in a game, we may not have the opportunity to get together real quick when something happens. So if we talk about it in pregame, we'll kind of already know, all right, well, this person's doing this, I'm going to do this or do that. And it allows for a better flowing game.
Very good. Greg, anything?
Oh, y'all hit it on the head. That was really, really good. But it really is just two things, and I'll try to keep it brief. The first one is we have to have respect for the game. And what I mean by that is, Quinn, you talked about situations where, let's say, I'm a novice referee and I work with two veterans, or all three veterans working together. But what happens when you're working with your friends? What happens when you're working with someone who most of the time you have like a lot of fun with in the locker room? What I mean by respect for the game is you have to be able to be like, all right, guys, let's focus here. Let's get down to business. Because we could be in the locker room talking for 40 minutes, and the next thing you know, oh my God, we got to get on the floor, and we only have 2 minutes to have a pregame. It's too late for that. So have your time, have some fun, but then especially if you're the referee, the crew chief on the game, it's like, hey, we have to be able to set aside time and be professional and have a solid pregame and prepare ourselves for the game. So that's one. Two, just to echo what Renee was saying, it's like talk about atypical situations. And if they were to happen, the best thing we can do, especially with the fans and the coaches and the players, is we look like we know what we're doing. So if we do have a fight, if the backboard does shatter, if something weird happens, we're not in the middle of the floor spending 5 minutes trying to figure out what to do. We've already talked about it. This is what's going to happen. Quinn, you're going to do this. I'm going to do that. Chuck, you're going to do this. And then we just keep going from there. So basically everything what Quinn was saying, Renee hit it on the nose, but it's like at a certain point, we got to get down to business, have fun, build a rapport with your partners in the locker room, but you also have to have enough respect for the game to be like, hey, guys, we have to set aside this time and have a conversation.
Guys, you guys are not going to let me say anything. Okay, that's very good. Uh, we talked about, not getting caught by surprise and managing the game. Greg, I've asked you to sort of give us some thoughts about just some general observations about how what you need to do to effectively manage a game.
Sure. I like to say, or it's not nothing or anything that I came up with myself, but KYP first, know your personnel. To the point that Quinn had alluded to earlier, if I know the personalities of the coaches, if I know the personalities of certain players or tendencies, I kind of have an idea of how I can kind of approach certain situations that may happen in the game. So for one, if you're talking about, okay, what happens during a dead ball versus live ball officiating, uh, what should my focus be? Should I be more focused on where the ball is, or do I have players crossing one another during a timeout? Where should my focus be in those instances? And what happens when I have a coach who likes to talk to me during a timeout or who likes to talk to me during a live ball? I have to understand where the line is supposed to be drawn and where my focus is supposed to be the entire time. So when it comes to game management overall, there's everything from coaches, there's communicating with players, there's the time on the game clock, where we're inbounding the ball. All of that is going through our minds from the time like the whistle is blown for a dead ball to the time we put the ball back in play. Now there might be some other things that I might have not spoke on, Chuck, that you might want me to talk about, but
one of the little bullet points I kind of had in mind for you to talk about is don't revisit. I mean, to me, that's part of effective game management. And what I mean by that, Greg, is don't revisit with coaches. Can you know what do you understand what I'm talking about there?
if you're referring to
a coach has got has jumped you about a particular play or asked a question about a particular play, and then, you know, 2 or 3 more trips down the floor,
Yep.
don't revisit with that coach, right?
Here's what I like to say. Be fair, but be firm. Give them, an ear, especially if they have a legitimate gripe. 1, 2 times, but on the third time, you have to draw the line in the sand. You've talked to the coach. Coach, you've made your point. We've already addressed it. I'd appreciate it if we just moved on. And then now, in a way, however it works for you or however you want to create that line, the coach has to know that that's where the line is drawn. And you have to have the backbone that if they do cross that line again, now we're going into, we have an official warning. Or if it continues or becomes egregious, we may approach a technical foul. But to the point of not revisiting, coach, this is the third play or third possession in a row you've talked about the same play. It's already been asked. It's been addressed. We have to move on. And, depending on your type of personality, for me, I like to kind of have fun, little chill on the court, but coaches know when I'm done because I've been fair the entire time. But now at a certain point, I have to be firm. Like this is where the line is drawn and it needs to stop. And once they know that, you've used all your tools in your tool belt. Now we got to escalate it a little bit with either a warning or a technical foul.
That's good. Another part of that is, let's say you've got a play and the coach is out there. How can that not be a Chuck? How is that not a foul? How can that not be a foul? First of all, that's not a question. That's a statement. And we need to know that. And then he stops or she, and you've gone 3 or 4 trips down the floor and it hadn't come back up again. The coach has gone on to coaching or something else. Don't take the first dead ball or timeout as an opportunity to go now and address that comment with the coach. He's forgotten about it, or let's assume he's forgotten about it because he hasn't brought it back up. Let him just going back to officiating and leave that alone and don't revisit that comment. All right, Quinn.
So I suspect Chuck has given me some of these topics as sort of penance for my younger officiating self. I was a really, really, really poor communicator as an official when I first started. Which is actually funny because I think if you flip now and ask, I would hope that if you ask some of the supervisors I work for, what's Quinn really good at? I think now they would probably tell you he can talk his way through just about any weird situation that pops up. So communication is something that we've got to be constantly working on. And it also constantly evolves because we always have new players, new coaches, new new personnel give us chances to discover new ways to communicate with people and to try and diffuse situations. So a lot of times people talk about in terms of communication, they talk about this sort of like you want to think of it like having a toolbox. You've got different tools for handling and communicating in different situations and with different people. And one of the things that certainly is occasionally a part of that sort of communication or game management toolbox is a technical foul. But it can't be the only thing in your toolbox, and it should rarely be the first tool you go for. Okay. Now, are there situations where that's what you got to pull out immediately? Absolutely, there are. Okay. But in almost every situation that I've ever called a technical foul, my first question, if we get in the locker room after the game, the first thing I'm going to say is, guys, could I have done something differently there to avoid that? So my thought is always, I'd like to do something before I get to the technical foul. But it is a tool that I have at my disposal. Certainly sort of procedurally, right? I have warnings I can issue. So if, in many circumstances, if I'm going to give a technical foul to a coach, I'd like to give a warning first. The rule book sort of recommends that, although certainly, they're situated, the head coach runs out to the logo at midcourt, jumping up and down, screaming. Okay, that's just a technical foul. But the sort of repeated, continuous animation sort of stuff, we give a warning. Okay, the next player, a couple plays later, they're still going. Okay, now we give a technical foul. So that's certainly part of it. But again, I want to have a lot of other things in my toolbox. Many of those things may involve me saying very little. Okay. It often begins with just acknowledging that I've heard a coach. Okay. Quinn, there's no way he did that on this play. Da, 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 da. Okay, I hear you, coach. I bet I say I hear you. I mean, 100 times a season. And I bet 90 of those times that ends it right there. All they wanted was to be acknowledged that I heard what they said. I'm not saying they're right. I'm not getting into a big discussion with them about, well, this is what I saw. Just, I hear you. Okay? A simple I hear you will diffuse a lot of situations. Then we can go on, some coaches, sometimes you got to stroke their ego a little bit. Well, coach, I know you wouldn't have drawn up, I know, you've got a great play drawn up there and da, 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 but some coaches that doesn't work with, right? So there you meet coaches, this is a great thing to talk about in pregame. Hey, here, I had this situation in a game, this coach, how would you guys have handled this? Bounce it off people, find out how they do these things and pick something that works and is authentic with you. But when we get to technical fouls, sometimes we have to call them. And when we do, it's just a foul. Technical foul is just a foul. If you get animated when you call technical fouls, then that's not good. You don't get animated when you call an illegal screen. Well, okay, I get a little animated sometimes on an illegal screen, maybe, but we don't get animated on a regular foul in the third quarter. Like, there's no need to get animated on a technical foul. It's just another foul. You want to call it and report it just like you would call any other foul in the game. It makes on tape, because nowadays everything's being filmed and it's going to be on tape. It's going to show up. It makes everything look like you're in control. You're just administering the rules, and it's fine. If you have one against a player, you should expect that the coach is going to want to know what happened. Okay. Now, if the player is standing at midcourt and flips double birds and the coach goes, well, what did he do? Just walk away. That's a situation you just walk away. But what's a comment at the other end of the court? We know when a coach has a reasonable question. Legitimate questions deserve legitimate, respectful explanations. Coach, he or she did X, Y, and Z. Okay, as simple as that. If the technical foul is on the coach, we do have the option, which I would highly suggest you exercise, to rotate away from the coach. Okay. And I would highly suggest this for two reasons. One, anything else that happens from the point of that technical foul on, the coach is going to take personally. Whether it is or isn't, you could be 100% right by rule, they're going to take it personally. And therefore, it's much more defensible if we have to give another technical foul, or if something else happens, it's much more defensible for another official to do that. So I would highly suggest you just go away if you call a technical foul on a coach. You want to try to avoid, whether it's a player or a coach, you want to really try to avoid bang, bang, two technical fouls back to back and tossing them. Make a reasonable effort to sort of try and calm things down, get out of the way, maybe let your partners, get the second one. If you are the partner, if you have a partner who has a technical foul, you try to get over there to help diffuse and give a second one if needed, so that, bang, bang sort of technical fouls are minimized to the greatest extent possible. Anything else?
No, that was it. That was great. That was great. You covered everything I wanted you to cover, and I appreciate it. Let's get to some clips that we'll talk about major moments, big moments, game management situations. Let's go to clip one and turn Renee loose on this one.
All right, so in this play, guys, we're going to be talking about some positioning and clock awareness. So initially, the positioning for the three officials in this play is great. You have your neutral, you have your slot, which he is covering his third of the court, and then you can't see the lead, but I'm pretty sure the lead is behind the farthest player doing his part. As we play the film, you're going to notice, though, the C or slot does not move with a sense of urgency to get to the last second shot. As you can tell, it's 3.8 on the clock. The slot, that is his third. So he's supposed to be refereeing that particular area of the court. Now, he does make a great call. It is a foul on the play, and he comes in strong to let everyone know he does have a foul. I just would prefer if he was already down the court in his correct positioning, it would have looked better just from a positioning standpoint. However, we also noticed that him and the trail come in to talk about the clock situation, which is correct. The only thing that I don't like is that they did not involve the lead on this play. And the reason I say that is being that the lead has no matchup to worry about in this particular play, the lead has the best look to make sure the clock has started properly, because with 3.8, that is the best time in the game, or the most important time in the game, to make sure that the clock is starting properly, or it can get you in a lot of mess. And meaning we're in high school, we don't have a clock that is going to, or a replay that is going to allow us to go over and look and see what exactly time was on the clock. So the only thing that I would say about as far as time wise, I would have asked the lead for his opinion to make sure that the clock started and stopped properly. As you can see, these two officials are trying to determine how much time should go back on the clock. And the only thing I would say is just make sure everybody has an opinion. And again, the best person to see the actual clock was the lead. So I just would make sure that I asked what their opinion was on this particular play.
Very good. Quinn, let's talk about primary responsibilities on this play.
Yeah, so this is one of those situations we talk about. So as we get down towards the last second shot, again, the sort of guideline in the mechanics manual is that the outside official, either trail or C, opposite the table, has the last second shot. However, in a last second situation where we're going to have to go the length of the court, it may be hard. In this case, the C is going to have the last second shot. And this case, that's totally fine. If we were to sort of reverse this and put the C table side and put the trail opposite, that's a situation where if we want to sort of think through, we want the C to still take that. Because going the length of the court, it's going to be really hard if the trail is the one opposite table to get all the way into the front court to have a good look at a last second shot to do that. So as it's sort of a rule of thumb, and again, you talk about things to talk about in pregame. My rule of thumb is if we're under 5 seconds, certainly, then I'm going to give it up to the C. If we're between 5 and 10, it's probably going to be somewhat situational. It may depend on sort of are they defending them full court? Like what's going on when they come out? But again, we'll communicate that before the trail puts the ball in play. So, and then if it's more than 10 seconds, I think the trail ought to be able to get in the front court. So again, but the biggest part of it is we want to communicate that clearly between trail and C. If the trail is in a position that they would normally take it but want to give it up, we want to communicate that. And regardless though of whose primary it is and this is the only play that matters, right? I mean, like whether or not that shot is off in time is like everybody's got to have an opinion. I won't say it's the only thing that matters. Is question. I mean, is there a foul? But everybody's got to have an opinion on whether or not the shot was good, was off in time, and if not, how much time should be on the clock. I just want to quickly piggyback too off something Renee mentioned about the slot. When we talk about, and we might have had a timeout slightly before this, I can't remember. If we had a timeout, again, we want to be talking about things could happen here. 3.8 is enough time, right, that I could have potentially an inbound and then a pass and then a shot, right? And in fact, that's what we have in this case, right? And so I think what happens here is, like she mentioned, the C's in a really good position here. And we need C here to be able to, make sure there's no illegal contact here. He doesn't knock this guy who's receiving the pass off. But as soon as this pass is sort of caught cleanly, and this player is actually going over towards trail side of the court, Slot has to find the next play, and it's got to be this guy who's coming down the court. So I think if right here Slot had recognized that this player was going to be the next one to get a pass and had just busted it to get in front of that player. But you can see it's almost not until the player catches the pass that he goes, "Oh, I've got to referee this," and then he's behind and he's trying to play catch up. So again, thinking situationally, we want to referee that first player. Okay, now everything's fine there. Now I've got to find the next player that's potentially going to be involved. And if you'd recognized that a little faster, I think you would have gotten in a better position to help on this play.
So this is a big decision. Thank you, Quinn. So Greg, this is a big decision here because if we rule this player not to be in the act of shooting, he's going to go to the line. He's in the bonus. They're in the bonus, so he's going to go to the line to shoot. They're not in the bonus. They're not in the bonus. But let's say they were in the bonus. They're going to go to the line to shoot 2, right? If we deem him not to be in the act of shooting. So he's got a chance to tie the game. If we deem him to be in the act of shooting, we're shooting 3, which gives him the opportunity to basically win the game. So the question is, Greg, why do you have him? They have him in the act of shooting. Why do you agree that he's in the act of shooting on this play?
I think to answer that question, it's important to know your definitions and really get into the rule book about when the act of shooting begins. And this is why I love this camera angle right here. Using the information from the rule book and the context of the game, his habitual shooting motion has started at the time he gets contacted for a foul. 2 hands on the ball, bumps on the shoulder, end of game situation. So you already know he's going to chuck a shot up. So it may not look like a normal jump shot, but this is his habitual shooting motion in the context of the play having 1 second left in the game. So it would be a lot for me to say this is not in the act of shooting. I would be just splitting the splittest of hairs, for lack of a better phrase, to not put this individual in the act of shooting. Because in my opinion, with 1.5 seconds left in the game, the only thing he could do is really shoot a jump shot here, and it's on the defender to not foul him there. We all agree that it's a foul. Obviously, it's more about the timing of when it happened. In my opinion, he already had 2 hands on the ball and was getting ready to start his jump shot. But in the rule book, right, everything that precedes their habitual shooting motion at the time of contact will be deemed in the act of shooting. So here, I'm pulling up to shoot, bumps on the shoulder. That's when I start to jump up for the jump shot. In my opinion, this is in the act of shooting.
Now, they put time back on the clock, and they should have. This is a situation where I feel like any time that a crew is in this situation, whether it's end of game or end of quarter, it doesn't matter. I know that if Renee and Quinn and Greg were refereeing this game as a crew and this was a college game, they would go to the monitor to determine how much time to put back on the clock. We don't have that benefit. Any time that we would go to the monitor, if we had a monitor, we need to come together as a crew and at least look like we're, coming up with something scientifically as opposed to what I call a wag. I actually think that they could have put a little bit more time on the clock than they did. Nobody had definite knowledge, I don't believe, in this situation. I do agree with Renee, and this is something that I'd like to talk about if there was a timeout preceding this play. Who is going to have primary responsibility for seeing that the clock started on time and making sure that the clock stops on time. In this scenario, it was the lead on both with respect to starting and stopping, because the lead had nothing else to look at. He had no dog in any fight. It could have been that this play had developed further down the floor in front of the lead, gotten to the lead quicker on the, and maybe they threw what is that Duke pass to what's his name, Chris Leitner. In that case, the lead would be tied up with the play itself, and the trail would be the one who would be looking at the clock to help out with the clock, try to come up with some definite knowledge. So that's something that we need to sort out. And even with the extremely veteran crew, make sure that we've talked about that and make sure we're all on the same page as to what we're going to be looking at and what our primary responsibilities are going to be. Do not ever, in this situation, if you're going to guess, don't guess 0.2 of a second. It does nobody any good whatsoever. So let's guess something above 0.3, which is what I think these guys did. I think that we could have put 1.2 back on the clock and been actually pretty daggone close to where we should have been. But we came up with something, and we came up with something that at least gives the other team an opportunity to come down the floor, which they did, and put up a shot, which they missed. Anything else? Am I missing anything, guys? Renee?
If I can add one thing, Chuck.
Please.
This is something that Renee had brought up when she was speaking, was not getting that lead official involved. It's let me say it this way. You have the ability to reconstruct a play, and if you don't have three opinions in there, you're not going to have all the pieces of the puzzle. Because if you're the trail official on this play, and let's say, ball gets inbounded, I don't necessarily see if the clock starts on time. Or let's say, same thing with the slot in the lead. No one knows that the clock started on time. So let's say in this instance, the clock didn't start. How do we reconstruct the play? There was an inbound pass, then a second pass, then he puts up a shot 3 or 4 feet behind the 3-point line. And let's say it takes about a second between the ball leaving the shooter's hands to the time it gets to the rim. So it's like by the time he gets fouled, it was about a second and a half. So if we put 0.4, that's not enough time, because a whole second had gone by between when he released a shot to the time the ball got to the rim. So like you were saying, Chuck, it should be around that 1 second, 1.2, 1.3. But we don't know that unless we have all three referees in the crew reconstructing the play.
Okay. All right. Next clip. This is early in the ball game, Renee.
Yeah. So in this clip, I'm going to be discussing clock awareness, because clock awareness is a big part of game management. If we can do our part, the game runs more smoothly. So in this particular play, the new trail, doesn't notice that the clock didn't start until he reaches half court. So once the ball's inbound, all right, especially with no pressure, all right, once you see that nobody's guarding the ball, you should take a glance at the clock to make sure it's properly started. So if he could have did that around as soon as the ball was in bounds, check the clock, we're good to go. Now, the other part of this particular play as well is the C has no matchup, all right, as he comes down and gets into his positioning. As he's coming down, the ball is already in bounds. So he should have also took a look at the clock and made sure that the clock was running properly. So in my opinion on this play, yes, the clock running properly is everyone's job to make sure that it is running properly. But the two best officials that could have caught this before it was caught should have been the trail and the C.
Very good. Now, Greg, you've got something you're going to talk about that we've rehearsed, but you also brought up a good point during the rehearsal about how the trail managed providing this information. So if you want to tack that on to what you were tasked to talk about, I'd appreciate
it. Yeah, for sure. Let's talk about first the task that I had at hand. And understanding how we got to the number that we're going to take off from the game clock. So one thing that you don't see in this clip is the trail referee coming up the floor and having a visible count in the back. Granted, is there pressure back there? No. Are they back there for 2, maybe 3 seconds? Sure. But in a situation where, let's say, there was pressure in the backcourt, if we have a habit of not having a visible count in the backcourt and something happens with the game clock, it's a lot more believable if you go to the table and say, hey, take 4 seconds off, and the coaches know you had an actual visible count. So, sure, I know a lot of people on the call have aspirations to work college basketball. Yes, on the college side of things, we use the shot clock for the 10-second backcourt count. But understand in high school basketball, our mechanics tell us we were supposed to have a visible count in the backcourt. Now, how we can use that information, if I'm the slot referee or if I'm the lead referee and I catch the clock malfunction, clock didn't start on time, I can go to my partner who had a visible count, say, hey, did you have a visible count? How much time did you have off the game clock? And then we can go and adjust the clock. So that's one. Two, from a management perspective, especially if you have, let's say this referee is the crew chief and the veteran on the crew, and the slot referee maybe is a novice referee, rookie, not much of a rapport with the coaches or anybody at the table. This would have been a great opportunity to either stop where the W is and project your voice to communicate to the table. But I think even better, if let's say Quinn was the referee at slot, I hit my whistle, hey, Quinn, tell the table to set the game clock to 5:32. So now once I communicate that to Quinn can just turn around, tell the table, and we're going to put the ball right back in bounds in front of table side. So if we don't do that, I'm having to cross the court. Maybe my partner doesn't see. Now I have to wait for my partner to come across the court. There's a long delay. Maybe a player or a coach has a question, and it just takes a long time. And all we're doing is fixing the game clock. So what are our options here? Boop, 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 boop. Kill the play. Either project to the table, please set the game clock to 5:32, or get my partner involved so that the coach knows, okay, at least if I've never seen him before, but if the crew chief is getting him involved and he must trust him to communicate with the table, it's an easy way, almost like a little icebreaker for your partner to get involved. Hey, Quinn, tell the table to put 5:32. I just slide down to my slot position. Lead just kind of slides over to the other side of the floor. And my partner at slot currently doesn't have to go anywhere but 10 feet up the floor. Rather than slowing the game down, having my slot come all the way up to the floor, grab the ball, hang on to it. Now that he's already at the table, he's walked 35 feet to get there. And it just takes a really long time. So how we look polished, how we look like we're running the game is using those little things, those little nuggets, right? It's like, boop, boop, hey, just fix the game clock. Real simple. Put the ball back in play.
Very good. Quinn, I'm going to take your little thing away from you and say something instead about having a visible count in the backcourt as a high school official. And I know, I can't tell you, there's been many times when I've taken these plays off thinking nothing's going to happen, so I don't have a count. And then all of a sudden the defensive team jumps the guy in the backcourt and pins him back there. And I'm 4 seconds into the backcourt and I don't have a visible count. And I've got to decide, all of a sudden I gotta have a visible count now. And on film, it's going to look like I just started the count. And that's not a good look. Now I always count in my head anyhow. I think probably most of us do. So I'm probably not going to miss the 10 seconds by not having a visible count, but it sure doesn't look good not to have a visible count when you get caught by surprise like that. So just to say what I was going to have Quinn say, we need to have a visible count 99% of the time. There's 99 and 9/10% of the time. Okay. Next clip. Yeah, you get to talk now, Quinn.
Great. All right, let's just play this through once. So well, before we do that, notice we're 4.4 seconds left in the first half. So let's watch this play through. it's a foul. We missed it, and Greg will get into in a minute, sort of the mechanics of the coverage of this play. But let's first just sort of talk about this. What if we had a whistle? How are we going to sort of adjudicate this situation properly? So we've got sort of several pieces to this play, and they're all happening very quickly. We're at the end of a period, so we've got to worry about the horn. Okay. We've got a shot by an airborne shooter. So we gotta process through active shooting, the shooter's airborne. Have they come back down to the ground yet? Or are they still when does the active shooting end? And then obviously we've got the foul itself that ends up happening here. And we have to understand when all three of these things happen in relation to one another in order to properly adjudicate this. Okay. So I think in this situation, as we watch it here, I think we can probably say we can certainly say here that the foul occurs while he's in the act of shooting and before the horn goes off. Okay, we still have 0.4 of a second here. So in this particular case, right, what we'd like to have is a foul, 0.4 of a second on the clock, and the shot wasn't made. And presumably this was a 3-point shot. I think it's a little hard to tell. It's sort of in the corner here, but if it's a 3-point shot, we're going to shoot 3 shots. Okay. But let's talk about some other situations. So what if we ruled that the shooter went up, released the shot, the buzzer sounds, and then the foul occurs before the shooter returns to the floor. Okay. Remember that the ball does not become dead just because the horn sounds for the end of the period. Because we have an airborne shooter, because we have a try in flight, the ball will not become dead until the basket's either made or missed, right? So in this situation, the ball is still live. We have an airborne shooter who, by rule, then is still in the act of shooting. So we have a foul in the act of shooting with no time left on the clock. Okay. So in that case, we would line the players up, we would not line the players up. We'd clear the lane. We would put the player in white who was fouled on the line to shoot 3 shots with no time on the clock. Okay. Now, another slightly different twist to this. So what if we have the shooter goes up, releases the ball, comes back down to the floor, goes up, shoots the ball, the horn sounds, they come back to the floor, and then let's say they're wiped out. This defender who's coming out just knocks them to the floor. And we have a foul. In that situation, again, assuming that the ball's still in flight, headed towards the basket, then the ball is still live. That is still a foul. However, it's no longer a foul in the act of shooting. So now whether or not you're going to shoot depends on whether you're in the bonus or not. If you're not in the bonus, then the half's over. The half's over, but you're going to report that foul. Let me make that clear. You're going to report that foul. It's going to be charged to the player and to the team, but in the second quarter. Okay, this isn't going to be some weird, it's not going to carry over to the third quarter. Okay. If, however, they're in the bonus, again, you're going to do all that stuff, but now you're going to clear the lane and that player is going to shoot whatever the bonus, or they're going to shoot 2. Sorry, the bonus would entitle you to 2 here. So you have to know when all these things happen in relation to one another in order to properly adjudicate this play. Now, in terms of getting this play right, Greg, I know we sort of, it's a shot in the corner. We sort of think about this. Okay, this is the manual says, the nice little diagram in the manual says this is Trail's play. to talk us through sort of how you think about coverage on these plays, Greg.
Yeah, like you said, our mechanics, the coverage tell us that this is trails play because it's outside the 3-point line. It's in the corner. We also have to understand that these are guidelines. This is what we should be doing, but context of the game kind of dictates what we need to do. The only thing that's going to happen with less than a second left is a jump shot. In this instance, could have been a drive, but it's a jump shot. There's nothing else we need to be refereeing. If there is something else that is flagrant, yeah, sure, we can referee that. But in order for me to put my crew in the best position to get this play correct, is one, I think the lead does a great job of being wide, but he's not looking in the right spot. As soon as that ball gets thrown to the corner, my focus isn't from, I have an awareness, I kind of take a peek. It's, I am refereeing this play. My head, my focus goes away from number 5 and number 4. I think there's nothing there. Straight to the corner. I'm refereeing that play. Now, does that mean I have a primary whistle? Not necessarily, because I understand that it's not technically my play because it's not in my primary. But I know, where does the contact happen? It's on the arm on the opposite side from where trail is. Trail might not be able to see the contact. So I have to know, okay, well, maybe trail can't see it because it's on the opposite side. I recognize that he might not have a whistle. The coverage tells me, well, it's not really my play because it's in the corner and it's not, in my primary. Wrong. Those are guidelines. In this specific play, that's your play. If trail doesn't get it, you got to get it. And one thing that I want to add is just because, and I talked about this in the last video with the block charge plays, just because a player embellishes contact does not mean it wasn't a foul. Did he need to throw himself to the ground, somersault, roll 4 times? No. But he got hit on the arm. It's a foul. Where does it happen? Opposite side of where trail is. Trail might not be able to see it. If I'm wide enough and understand that there's only one play left, I turn my focus to the corner and referee that play.
Very good. So to add just a little bit, look, I'm not calling an off-ball illegal screen on this play. I'm not even looking for an off-ball illegal screen. I'm not even looking for rebounding fouls on this. But it's not going to be a rebound. There's no time left to rebound. So as the lead, what I'm looking at is that matchup in the corner. I want to give good, solid secondary help on that jump shot. That's the only, if there's something egregious that happens, there's only one other matchup on the floor. If the slot can't handle something like the guy picks the player for red picks the player for white up and throws him into the bleachers or something. If he can't pick that up, then he doesn't belong out there to begin with. And that's there, he'll get it. Okay.
Just
Yes.
quickly, I want to add, Greg sort of mentioned early, know your personnel. And the thing that it's hard, almost impossible to do at the high school level and even the college level. But if you talk to really high level, like NBA and really elite college officials, I mean, they will know whether they'll know whether each shooter's right-handed or left-handed. They'll know, oh, okay, this guy's right-handed, and if I have a corner 3, I'm going to need to come out here and take a look because it's going to probably be a foul on his inside arm. And I mean, these are all things, again, you may not know them for every player, but these are all things like Greg's talking about this play. If you know he's a right-handed shooter, we've got to give a little special attention to that arm, right? Because if he gets brushed on his off arm, it's probably not that much. If he gets a little flick here on the elbow, I mean, on his shooting arm, then that's a big deal. So again, for those of you who want to really try and take your game to the next level, all these little things can really help inform your officiating.
Yeah, Quinn, that's great because this is an obvious foul, in my opinion. But what if it wasn't? What if it was just that brush on the right elbow? And Trail definitely wouldn't be able to see that.
Yeah.
You have to know that you have to referee that play.
All right. Turn it back over to Renee.
All right, guys. So in this clip, we are talking about high school mechanics. All right. So just like Quinn just said in the previous play, guys, mechanics are what are going to set you apart from other officials. All right. So if you make sure you do your part mechanically wise, you're going to do yourself a favor. So in this particular play, we have our new trail. We're going from back court to front court, and the trail inbounds the ball across the lane when the trail should have initiated a rotation. All right. So when in high school, our high school mechanic, when we are trail going down back court to front court, we should be ball side. All right. So we should not bounce the ball across the lane to start the play. We should just go ahead and initiate a rotation where trail comes over. The C goes down to the new lead, and then our C rotates over. And one thing we can do too, we're not going to make it noticeable that we're not in the right positions. But as a partner, the C could have just simply just said, "Hey, Victoria, I'm going down," and that would have jogged her memory to say, "Oh, let me come on this side." It's not like we can't talk to each other or speak to each other about little things that we only pick up. The next thing I want to talk about in this particular play is the C. C does an awesome job in staying engaged in the press, staying engaged, going down the court as the ball is on his side of the court. So he takes it all the way down into the front court. I think this is very good, and we should definitely look into this because I think one thing we don't do well in high school is pick up that coverage from the C. So as the ball comes across court, that technically is NC's primary. All right, you should not have the trail coming across to referee the ball. All right, the C should stay. All right, engage in the play, take their primary, and then obviously go back to your initial positioning once the ball leaves your primary. We just have to do a better job in assisting our trail on those plays because it doesn't look well also sometimes when the trail is the one who's coming across the court to get that play when the C is right there. So just be mindful of when that ball comes across the court in a pressing situation that we know our primaries and we're refereeing the right primaries.
That's great, Renee. And I want to throw something in, Greg, before I get to the game management aspect of this. Was this after a made basket? Does anybody know? Are we administering a throw in? I don't remember. It doesn't matter. The point I want to just take a second to, and it applies to the last clip that we just saw too on the coverage. So this is a women's college mechanic, right, Renee? Bouncing it across the lane. Okay. And and on that coverage, and on the last play, Greg, that you were talking about with the lead giving secondary help in the women's college mechanics, that would have been the lead's primary, that jump shooter. Okay. And Renee, I took the position last year with the games that I assigned that if I have the entire crew is made up of women's college basketball officials, that I was okay with that crew using women's college mechanics, right? Did that work out okay?
Yeah, it actually was perfect. Because as we know, it's not easy going back and forth from high school to college on any given night. So being able to implement something that you're used to is very helpful when officiating the game. But just to go back from the play that you guys were talking about, you guys made some great points of there's the lead on that play has to be aware of what's going on. You are the closest official to the play, and you have to have an input or at least have that secondary help for that trail official. So it was a great job that he got wide. And I'm pretty sure if you asked him, he probably had an opinion about the play, or he could have brought an opinion. But I am very thankful that you allow us to use our mechanics. I kind of think our mechanics are a little better, but
I actually I think some of them are, and I'm going to continue that. That's going to continue to be the policy this year. And the same thing, Greg and Quinn, on the men's side. The mechanics are really not that much different between men's college and high school, but to the extent that they are, I'm happy for a crew that's comprised of three men's college basketball officials. Use your college mechanics. It's fine with me. The coaches and the players won't know the difference as long as everybody's on the same page. Okay. The game, from a game management standpoint, Greg, there was something I really didn't care for that much on this particular play. If you would take us through that.
Yeah, yeah, and like Renee was saying, this crew did a great job of coming up the floor and covering where they're supposed to cover. Now we get to the front court, and we were focused the entire time, and then something happens where our focus isn't exactly where it needs to be, and that's when the coach starts to talk to the official. The coach is going to talk to you, which is fine, but we have to know that we have our job to do first. And what that is the referee. As you can see, this referee, obviously the coach gets his attention, takes the whistle out of his mouth, and actually leans over to see if he can actually hear the coach a bit better. What that tells me is that you're trying to focus on two things at once, when our focus should be on the game. If it's that important that the coach needs to talk to you about it, they can call a timeout. Well, not necessarily in this instance, but they might be able to call a timeout. Okay. It's very easy for us to be like, 1 second. And at that point, the coach would be able to back off. At least you acknowledge the coach and tell him, hey, I hear you, but let me worry about my job first. Now, how do you say that in, 1 or 2 words? 1 second, coach. I don't even have to take the whistle out of my mouth to do that. Sometimes you have coaches that are really paranoid. And if a coach sees the other coach talking to you, you take the whistle out your mouth, you're leaning over, maybe you turn around and you smile at him while the game is going on. The other coach is going to think like, this guy's not engaged. He doesn't know what he's doing. He's not really refereeing the game. So the more or the less we can do things where coach can like pinpoint things to use against us, the better. So right here, looks like we're buddy, kind of having a conversation. Don't know what he said. Coach puts, taps his back like a good job or something. I don't know what was said. All I know is that from seeing this clip, if I'm the other coach, I don't trust him. So again, we don't want to necessarily ignore coaches. I hear you. I acknowledge the coach, and I continue to referee. Now, when there's a dead ball goes out of bounds, there's a foul or something like that, I can turn around and be like, what's up? It would be the same thing if I have a foul and I'm reporting it to the table. I have a job to do first. Let me go report the foul to the table, then we can have a conversation. Let me referee the game first, then we can have a conversation. But in the meantime, 1 second, I got you. Something along those lines, just to get the coach off your back a bit.
We talked about like that sort of earlier with communication, that phrase 1 second, that's something to put in your toolbox, right? That's something to try out now. My guess would be often when we have these awkward situations because we didn't have the right communication tool in our toolbox yet to work with it. And so what Greg's given you is sort of another tool to try out. You may try it out and it may not work for you. Maybe maybe it doesn't work, but you've got another thing in the toolbox to try out. And that's what scrimmages are for. That's what, blowout games where you feel like, oh, there's not a lot going on. That's what all this stuff is for. Try it out. And that's a phrase I've not used before, but now it's one I'm thinking about. How could I implement in my game?
And I think something like that can disarm a coach a little bit because depending on the words you use or the phrase, coaches might take certain phrases a certain type of way. It's one way for me to say, hold on, versus, or one thing for me to say, 1 second versus hold on. Now, if I tell him hold on, he's like, oh, who does this guy think he is? 1 second just comes off a little bit more pleasant. So again, to Quinn's point, try and use it, put it in your tool belt, put it in your toolbox. Chuck, I don't know if you have anything else to add to that, but this right here, that freeze frame, which I think is great. If I'm the other coach, I'm like, oh, okay. I see how it is.
And I guess the only thing I would add to that is, this is a conference game in the Piedmont Triad Athletic Conference, and I can tell you that every coach in that conference is paranoid about the coach that is talking to this referee right now. So, and that's just something that somebody, if I'm in this crew, I mean, that's probably one of the first things I want to say is, hey, let's not give a perception that we are catering to the coach in green or white in this case, gold in this case, uh, because there's this whole thing about, how everybody thinks that we cater to this coach because of his prestige. So you have to be aware of that. Okay, let's move to the next clip. Renee, we're going to talk a little bit about assistant coaches.
Not
Oh
quite,
no, I'm sorry.
not quite.
Yeah.
That's
All right. I could spend a lot of time talking about this, but we're into a lot of time already, so I'm gonna try to be brief. First of all, what's the word you use, Greg? Is it urgency?
Yep, urgency.
We're not, we need to see more of that. We're not seeing what we're looking for in terms of urgency here on this clip. And I don't think I need to say anything more about that. I mean, I think everybody can see what I'm talking about. Now, the foul that is called is not on the player that you would think it's on. It's on, if you point to him, Quinn,
yeah. I'm
the
going to try and get
foul
it.
is actually on.
So the foul is going to be on this player right here. If I move it forward a couple frames, he swipes down.
Right.
It's a great call. It's a great pickup.
Right. So now we come in, and what we want to do is, I think Renee made this point during rehearsals, we can't dictate how many, I mean, we're not in control of how often the team fouls, and that's going to affect flow and pace and all that. But we can control how diligent we are, how efficient we are in putting the ball back in play. The sooner we put the ball back in play, the sooner players have to go back to playing and coaches have to go back to coaching. Here we have 2 minutes and 37 seconds on a 1-point ball game with the home team hoping that for the first time in probably a century, they get to beat Greensboro Day. They have a technical foul called against their player. And we'll see it here. It's going to be 20, whoever that's 23, 20, whatever.
25.
Yeah. Now, if we stop it, we might as well just stop it right here and I'll talk for just a second. So the issue that I had, this obviously, this is how I ended up getting this film. This was a big moment, a big technical foul. Apparently, the player against whom the technical foul was called, in his commentary about the call, which didn't even involve him. I mean, the call wasn't against him. He wasn't even involved in the play, but apparently he used some profanity. And I think that in this particular case, it wasn't profanity that like everybody in the gym's going, oh my God. I don't think it was loud. I think it was pretty much between the player. I don't know what exactly he said, but it wasn't something that everybody in the gym could hear, or very many people in the gym could hear, even for that matter. But the fact that let's say only that referee, only the calling referee is the only person that could hear the profanity. That doesn't make it not a technical foul. I mean, it could be where you just have to call it, even though you're the only person in the gym that hears it. But I think, as we said earlier, we like technical fouls to call themselves, if at all possible. I like technical fouls where people come out of the stands after the game and come up to me and say, Chuck, we were sitting up there but we were wondering when you were finally going to call a technical foul. We could see it coming. The problem that I have in this play, the context, the situation, this player had been an issue the entire game. This wasn't the first time that this player had voiced his displeasure about a call that was made by the crew. He gestured during the game. He threw his hands up. He talked. He had this, that, and the other. What I would say to the crew in this game, it's hard for me to defend this technical foul because we had opportunities during the course of the game to pull other tools out of the tool bag, Quinn, and try to get this managed, for lack of a better word. I really don't like managed, but to try to get this under control, to try to get this guy's level, this player's level to a place where we could live with it. Instead, we let it go and we let it go, we let it go, we let it go. And then with 2 minutes left to go in a 1 point ball game, we now pull the tool out of the tool bag. And it may be that at that point, we had no other option, but we had options earlier in the ball game. And that's why I watched the whole film, is because I want to see the context in which this technical foul is called. I can't defend this technical foul, but also I don't know what the player said. So it may have been entirely proper. What I would like to have seen though is a better job of trying either talking to 25, I think that's his number, directly, and Quinn, in a way that maybe everybody in the gym hears what I've got to say at some point. Hey, 25, apparently you don't understand how to behave. Or turn to my crew. Hey, Quinn, Greg, 25, he's got something to say about every play. We're gonna have to talk 25. And say it where everybody in the gym can hear you, including his coach. Embarrass him maybe a little bit, maybe. I don't care. And see if that works. Go to the coach at some point and say, hey, coach, look, we have talked. This is like the third time we've had to talk to 25. Please help us out with 25. We don't want to do this. When it actually happened at this point, again, I don't know what he said, but if we could have just turned to him at that point and said, look, dude, what you just said is unacceptable, but you're about to take what is a really good basketball game and throw it in the trash can. Do not put us in that position. Anyhow, I would have liked to have seen us pull out as many tools as possible with this. I mean, he gave us plenty of opportunity to see how many tools we had in the tool bag during the course of the game. And if we could have, anytime we can avoid a technical foul and diffuse the situation, make the game better, I'm a happy guy. Anytime we call a technical foul with 2 minutes left to go in a 1 point ball game, it's coming to me. That play, that situation is coming to whoever the supervisor is. It's coming to the supervisor. So just be aware of that. I'm not saying you can't call a technical foul in this situation. I'm saying make that. Hopefully, that was a last resort. Okay.
On this play, this is one where it's technical foul on a player, like we discussed earlier. And it's a technical foul in a 1 point game with 2 minutes left. You're going to have to go over there. You got to go talk to the coach. I mean, the coach is going to want to talk. This official does a good job of going over to talk to the coach, but like I think I don't know if maybe it's sort of wishful thinking. The officials sort of turns like she's going to go back for a second. Maybe that was sort of wishful thinking. Like maybe he won't say anything to me. But he does, and we go over and have a conversation. The official is not animated, which is good, right? We don't want to elevate this situation any more than it's already going to be elevated. I would just add, if I'm going to have a conversation with a coach, I'd usually like them not to be out on the court. I usually would just walk with them back over towards their coaching box. I mean, we're not way outside the coaching box, but just walk with them back over towards the coaching box as we're talking. Maybe we pause there briefly for a second to finish up whatever the conversation is. The player did X, Y, Z. And that's all you can do is explain it. Walk over there, explain it, answer their question, get away. It's not a debate. So, coach, he did this, this, and this, and that's when I assess a technical foul. And then you walk back down into the front court. Get get away. Um, so just a note about that. The other thing I'll note is that this is a live ball while we're shooting free throws. The positioning of these players is perfectly fine. Sometimes for some reason we tell players to get back, get into the backcourt. They don't have to be in the backcourt. It's just like any other free throw in that they have to be outside the 3-point arc and behind the free throw line extended. Um, I would say this is where, again, if the trail gets away over here, I might, sort of get myself down here a little bit just to, I might actually tell these coaches and stuff to, this is still a live ball. Like, hey guys, again, we don't need to be rude and demeaning, but hey guys, make sure these guys stay on the court and you guys, have a seat. Let's we're gonna get these shot and get it back in play. But the positioning of the players is perfectly fine in this case.
And again, I don't want to beat the crew up on this technical foul. I don't know what was said. I just want to make sure we're all aware of the need to deal with issues. And again, pregame, if anybody, I don't know that anybody in the crew did, but if anybody in the crew had experience with the team in white during the course of the season, they would know who the players are on the team white, including the player involved in this technical foul, that you're going to have to spend some, pay attention to. I think Greg mentioned that when he was talking about pre-games. Just don't stake him out. Don't do your pregame like, okay, this guy, we're gonna have to have a technical foul on this guy before the game's over with. I don't want it to be negative. I want it to be an awareness situation that everybody's aware that we need to pay attention to something. All right. Let's move on to talk about assistant coaches for just a second. I think that's the next clip, isn't it, Quinn?
Yep.
All right. So in this particular play, you're going to notice if you look at the black bench, the assistant coach goes down the sideline, which is unacceptable, or he is not allowed to do that. So we're talking about game management in this particular week. Handling coaches is a part of game management. All right, they are part of the game. So we have to address benches when needed. It is every official's job to make sure they are aware of what's going on the benches. So we have to come together as a team and make sure we're handling that. When you're addressing coaches, we do not have to be mean. All right. I know we are held to a higher standard than coaches are. So we have to understand that. All right. So when you address a coach, just be mindful of how things may be perceptive or come off when you're addressing it. What I usually do if I have this situation is I would just address the head coach and just say, hey, you mind helping me out with your assistants coach? I need them seated or whatnot. And that also allows for them to be aware, okay, my coaches are maybe doing too much. So when you do have to warn or you do have to give a technical foul, it's not coming out of the blue as, well, what's going on or what's happening? 2 minutes ago, coach, I told you, could you help me out and handle your benches? So it allows for that dialect right there for you to be able to issue that warning or feel comfortable issuing that warning on that technical, and it's not coming out of the blue. But it is every official's job to make sure we are aware of what is going on in the benches. But like Greg would say, or his line this tonight has been, our first job is to referee the game. So do not take time to take your eyes off the court to address the coach. Just get to the coach when you're able to address the situation, unless it's needed to be addressed at that point.
All right. Next. So first thing I want to say is we do a good job here of recognizing that the coach wants a timeout. And again, situational awareness, court awareness. The team in black has been on a little bit of a run, so we've got to be aware of the fact that this might be a situation where the coach is looking for a timeout. The Renee and Quinn and Greg have gotten to the point in their careers where the coach is probably looking at them and they're looking at the coach, and the coach is saying, "Oh, I think he's telling me I probably need a timeout here." And So, but just be aware of that's part of the, you can't manage something that you're not even aware of. So that's a good job there. But now everything goes south from there. So you'll see the assistant coach, the same assistant coach, he is aware because he sees something happening. So he goes right to him. Okay. And something does happen. Now, by the way, I don't know if we could see, but we're in the first quarter of the ball game. So the first thing I would say is the panel has talked about dead ball officiating. And if you watch the center official in this situation, he's not officiating anything. I don't know what he's doing, but we're not officiating anything in this situation. So he's not aware of anything that's going on with any of the players going to their benches. That's not good. I mean, I think he's trying to determine something about the spot of the throw in. And certainly that's something that you need to work out, but that's not your first priority. And we'll get that settled sooner or later, but in this situation, it should have been later, not sooner.
And to your point, Chuck, we're in the first quarter.
Yeah.
If we happen to move them up, if we get that one wrong in the first quarter, it'll be okay.
There you go. That's a good point. So now we're going to have this little altercation kind of a thing take place. So if we take us back to that, Quinn. Okay. So the player for white gives the player in black a little bit of a bump, bang, right there. And he gets it back. He gets a little retaliation. So now we have an official who is pretty much right there, the new lead. You can't see the new lead, but it's pretty much right there. Apparently doesn't see the first bump or chooses to ignore the first bump, but does see the second and chooses to penalize that in the first quarter of the ball game. Now, these two players have a history. These two teams have a history. That should have been pre-gamed. I would have liked to have think that it was pre-gamed. And so we really need to have really good dead ball officiating in this game. More so, maybe. I mean, if there are levels of need for dead ball officiating, this one requires a high level of dead ball officiating. Now, personally, as for my varsity staff, the way I would have liked to have seen this happen is no technical fouls. I would have liked to have seen both players admonished, both coaches talked to, and we play on. And especially since we apparently didn't see the first shove, we can't just sit there thinking, well, this shove by black came out of nowhere. It didn't come out. It's not going to come out of nowhere. So we've got to think either I chose to ignore the first one and now it looks like I shouldn't have, or I didn't see the first one. I didn't see what precipitated the shove by black. But even if you saw both shoves, just talk to the player, man. It wasn't that bad. It wasn't that big of a deal. They didn't even. I mean, they both got their little shots in, and they were fine to move on. Had it been more than that, yeah, but this wasn't that much of a big deal. Get to the players, get to the coaches, and let them know that that's the end of that, or it better be. Now, the other option is a double technical foul. You can't penalize the second one without penalizing the first one. But again, you can't manage a game properly if you're not aware. If you're not looking at it, if you don't see it, you can't manage it. But we have to see that. That's our job, is to see that. This is just dead ball, lack of dead ball officiating is all it is. So if we have a double technical foul, just keep in mind that we don't shoot free throws on any doubles in high school basketball. I don't care doubles of anything. We don't shoot free throws. We just go to the point of interruption. But I think there's also a key element here that was also missed, and that's a rule situation. When the timeout was called, all the players are considered to be bench personnel. Is that not correct, panel? At that point, once the timeout is granted, the players are all bench personnel, right? Everybody say yes.
Yes.
Okay. Well, if they're bench personnel and you call the technical foul, then what does that mean? That means that it's indirect to the head coach, right? That
Yep.
means the head coach is supposed to sit.
Got to sit down.
That never happened. That never happened. So the crew missed that. And the other thing about this, and this just to end up this whole rant that I'm going on here is, well, two things really. Number one, now watch how much time we're going to spend. I think somebody on the panel said, hey, listen, if you're the calling official in a technical foul, it is certainly okay to rotate out and get opposite the table, get away from the coach. But we don't do that. As a matter of fact, look who we're talking to. Look who's talking to it's the assistant coach. We got two assistant coaches standing up during a live ball, and both of them giving the calling official a commentary. What you can't see, because Quinn's got our pictures up here, is then the head coach decides he needs to get into it with him too. And the calling official stands here and takes it the entire time and finally gets fed up with it. And now starts waving arms and look, here we go. Here now the head coach decides he wants a crack at it because everybody else got a crack and he wants a crack. And now we're gonna go, oh my, oh, well, wave arm, now we're gonna march around and point and do this, and then we're gonna point over there, and we're gonna do that. And I assume what we've done now is we put a warning in the book to the head coach on the head coach, is what I think we've done. If it was an assistant coach that we put the warning in the book on, that's by rule incorrect also. You don't put a warning in the book for an assistant coach. So I'm assuming, well, give them the benefit of the doubt and assuming that it was the head coach. But why is the calling official over there that entire time? Why did somebody not come get her and get her out of the way? I don't know the answer to that question, but it should have happened. And I'm telling you right now, for my staff, if I'm the calling official on that thing and I'm over there stuck getting into it with the assistant coaches and the head coach and half the team and everything else, somebody better come get me. And when they come get me, I better move. I better take their help and get out of there. Now, one last thing I'm going to say about this. So the whole technical foul situation was because of so-called altercation between two opposing players, right? Well, where do you think all those players are right now in this picture? They're not in the picture because they're all in the backcourt. But where are the three officials? Who's refereeing dead ball players now? Well, it's live ball, but who's refereeing any of those players? Well, we just had an altercation, and the answer to that is nothing. If you're going to make them get in the backcourt, or if they're just going to get in the backcourt on their own because they think that's where they're supposed to be, somebody needs to get back there with them. Somebody needs to be looking at them. Anything, guys, that I need to add to that?
No. What the one thing I would add, and I actually heard one of my buddies say this in a game, and the coach was like stunned, was when you're standing over there, you just gave out a technical foul, your adrenaline's rushing. You got two assistant coaches talking to you, probably don't know what to say. Let's say you're ignoring them. They walk away, and then now a head coach comes to talk to you. Human nature is like, all right, now I'm pissed. My blood is boiling. I might say something I don't want to say. I might do something I don't want to do. So to Chuck's point about walking away and just be like, hey, Quinn, come get me, man, and switch. But something that my buddy had said one time, because he didn't have a response and the coach wanted a response, and he said, you can't misquote silence. He said that and walked away to the other side of the court because he knew that if he stayed there, he was going to say something that he shouldn't have. And now he puts him in the box. Or he was just going to have this knee-jerk reaction and just want to give a coach a technical foul when the easiest thing you could have done was just walk away. So don't be afraid to switch with somebody. Does it you might have this thought in your head like, oh, but if I switch, then it's going to show that like the coach got under my skin, or maybe I don't have a thick enough skin and I'm weak minded. No, the best thing for the game was to not give a technical foul in that situation. And I know that if I stayed, I was going to give a technical foul. So the game always comes first before myself. Game, crew, self. And for the betterment of the game, I would have switched.
Very good. That's it. I had 4 questions I was going to give out, but we've gone long enough. I'm going to pretend like I gave them out. When I send the email out, I'm going to pretend like I gave them out so people think that I gave them out, but I didn't. Renee, thank you so much for taking the time. Greg, you were awesome again. Thank you so much. And Quinn, I can't thank you enough for all the time that you put into this. I really, really appreciate it. And I know that everybody on the staff appreciates all the time that you put into this, Quinn.
Thanks, guys.
Quinn's a goat.
Good night, everybody. Good night, everybody. Have a great season. I'll be sending emails out. Thank you.